Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode is with Jacob Templar. Jacob is a physical therapist. He's an educator. He's been posting on Instagram and making content for a while. It's been a long time of me following Jacob. He acknowledges complexity in practice and working with other human beings, and we talked a lot about that. He's got a wealth of knowledge in rehab, lifting, and a lot of categories that I think are really interesting for clinicians, students, people who love the gym, people who love physical training. We talked about a lot of topics. This is a great episode if you're just interested in managing pain, understanding, biological organisms like a human and complex systems, and just cutting through the BS and the noise and a lot of things in the online space. You can follow Jacob at Strength and Evidence Physio on Instagram. And he also does continuing education courses that you can find through his Instagram. It's a great conversation. I really appreciate Jacob being here. Hope you enjoy it too. Thanks so much. Peace. All right, Jacob Templar. Dude, that's a badass last name. I also just want to say Jacob Templar is a badass last name. So nice to conversate with you.
I can't get my tattoos out.
Yeah, they're too your shirt's too tight.
Yeah. And yeah, my arms, because I have a tattoo here, actually. And then I have one on my whole side, like my whole left side.
Nice. So I'm very yeah. Are you a direct descendant of the Knights Templar in some way, shape, or form? Do you know?
Probably not. So like the history of it is like if you are, it was that you're like an illegitimate child because they were monks and supposed to be celibate.
That's right.
Most of what we have looked at, like my family had looked at, is for the ancestry, is that if you have a family member that in some way or shape or form like was like one of the like essentially like a servant to them, like blacksmith, silversmith, whatever, all the stuff they wouldn't do because they were just monks and warriors, anything besides being like a squire, because that would be maybe part of their duties too, was you could, a lot of people would take the last name Templar when they needed surnames.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so you are also your fellow physio. I've actually followed you in some way, shape, or form for a long time. I don't think I was formally following you on my business account for a while, but I know I followed you on my personal account. But you've been making content like since before, like I started making content in COVID because I was like,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But you've been putting out stuff prior to that, correct?
Yeah, probably since I was like a new grad. So like if you scroll back, I have like stuff on there from then that I probably like, some of the stuff I greatly disagree with now, but I've just left it there. And then I have stuff way back that's like fitness stuff from when I was in college. Like I was in grad school at the time.
What? Okay, so that's a really good point to just jump off of is the what were you posting that you would disagree with now, or what has changed for you as a physio? How long have you been in practice, I guess is another.
Next year it'll be 10 years.
Okay, super cool. So you're about to come to that decade in practice. I think I'm about 2017.
Yeah, I graduated in 2016.
Yeah. So, but what have you changed your mind on?
Let's see. I used to post stuff like about McGill stuff and then like a lot of McKenzie stuff. I mean, I'm still still have the certification in McKenzie, but that did teach me a lot of stuff that is useful, but like I wouldn't say I practice that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I did it wasn't McKenzie. I'm not McKenzie certified, but we did do like a mobilization with movement like 2-day course when I was like a new grad. It was offered, and it just like showed me it's like, oh, there's a lot of ways to just like kind of help people reframe pain and movement, like, and how
Yeah.
pain can be really inhibitory to some extent, right? But I think it's just yeah, I think if your thinking doesn't evolve but also kind of come back full circle, like you're a little bit like, probably, I don't know. It's like I think it always goes back to what's the narrative of this thing, right? For me, right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's true. I mean, there's some stuff that I would still say, like, even with the narrative, like, I'm not a big fan of, say, like, dry needling is one of them that I'm like, well, I don't really care what the narrative that you use is because, like, you can achieve the same thing with like acupressure, and that has like a lower risk profile. Like not that like dry needling's like risk profile I don't think is like super high, but it's like, well, if somebody comes in for like neck pain or back pain and they get a pneumothorax from that, and you could have gotten the benefit by doing acupressure, like okay, that wasn't worth it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like the associated risks of some of the stuff, even when they are low, are still like they're not zero, and like people should be informed of that. I think it's probably a lack of people being informed of that a little bit, right?
Yeah, yep.
You mentioned on in like the background of me and you chatting back and forth, just
Mm,
like you're posting like stuff that is like nuanced about complexity.
yep.
Well, also like, dude, I don't know. I mean, and I kind of think sometimes I think like I just make shitty content. Or it's just not very entertainment oriented, and then the
Yeah.
algorithm's like, dude, don't do that. But
Yep.
you
Yep,
kind of
exactly.
you kind of recognize that like, yeah, it's, some of the stuff that I want to post isn't maybe gonna like get what I would like, as much attention as I would like, right?
Yeah.
What are your like why are you posting on Instagram? As I guess the biggest question.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is that like it is an outlet for me to talk about the things that I want to talk about and like dive into, and like gives me more of a reason, and like it helps me to refine like my thinking, because I'm like, when you're having to like I mean, because the concepts that I'm posting about are very complex, like, and people even read the post and think like, oh, this is very like complicated, and it's like, well, I've also dumbed it down like for you to be post it on here, like the amount that I could put if this was like, say, a blog, or like if it was a post like, or a course, like I reuse like a lot of the content in the courses that I teach, for example, for my slides. And like often, like one slide deck that I post can be a half an hour worth of like course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Instagram as a like a, I guess I'm gonna call it like a modality. It's like it is short form content, right? Like
Yeah.
the attention span of the average well, just look at even what does well, right? Like I
Yeah.
posted like the soup Nazi being the gains Nazi today, and it's gonna get way more traction than like the thing that I was kind of sussing out and maybe trying to convey, that is oriented about helping somebody reframe like maybe what their pain means, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's always like I love that you said, because I think that's the ultimate utility of it, is it like helps us get better at thinking, right? And
Yeah.
like conveying the information, and also maybe attracting enough attention from people who maybe are totally down the ATG rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
freaking themselves the F out about their anterior knee pain a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Uh so like what are the well, I mean, you mentioned your continuing education and your course and that type of stuff, but like if you were going to talk to Jacob 10 years ago, right? And Jacob 10 years ago is actually going to like listen to you. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
what are some of the themes that you're trying to convey?
I think a lot of it is probably like stuff related to like biopsychosocial things that we know, and like actually like learning probably a little bit more motivational interviewing, and like different cognitive behavioral therapy strategies and like stuff like that. um I'd probably would have speed run a little bit more of like my programming understanding. Not that I wasn't invested in that, but like I think the utility of what I knew like in application and like being able to apply to other people was like probably above average for like a new grad, but like I would say now I'm at the level of like, like I can program bodybuilding and powerlifting and stuff like with like pretty high level like ability now.
Mhm. Mhm. Would you say like, okay, I love, that's a great way of framing it. I also feel like me now would make it a lot less freaking like complicated than me like 8 years ago type of thing. Like
Mm,
as far as even just the understanding of like I do a lot of what I would consider like undulating periodization, and most of it's just to maintain enough novelty for the person's brain, so that, oh,
yeah.
I'm doing three reps this week instead of seven, right? Or like instead of six. And like, is there a giant difference in stimulus? Well, maybe a little bit, but 10 years ago, man, I was like so trying to freaking like I guess where I go with it more is like, hey, adaptation takes some time, right? So
Hmm.
let's like let that occur. And uh yeah, like where would you say maybe you're better at it, and what do you mean by that? Is I guess what I would clarify there.
Um, yeah, because I think like 10 years ago there was like a big push on like it was popular to just like push volume like rather than like wait out and like force adaptation, which some people still do in like in certain populations. Like there's going to be some people that respond really well to that versus like, oh well, like yeah, I can program this, it'll have some novelty, you don't need to keep changing it all the time, and just like ride it out. And then like also you see this like cyclical nature of certain things too. Like what I've been seeing lately is like you see a lot of the memes now about like science-based lifters, and I think like science-based lifting is like that's where you want to be, like more science-based. But then at sometimes we get like lost in the sauce too much, and that's what I mean. Like it's been coming back around again
Hmm.
because and that's where I think like the Eric Helms like pyramids, when you want to know like just if you just want to know like fundamental like how to like help somebody better in the gym, like those are probably really like good starting points. It'll tell you everything you need to know, and then you can like build off of that because he layers it, right? It's like it's supposed to be like the bottom level is the most important. And if you're sacrificing things from that bottom level to then do something different at the top level, well, that's probably not worth it because of the like magnitude of effect. Where now people are getting like lost in the sauce with like long lever muscle training. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe those are more beneficial, but if you're not like consistent and enjoying your training and like getting enough volume, frequency, intensity, like all that stuff, like those are the consistency, volume, frequency, intensity, like that, those are more important.
Yeah.
um
The Muscle and Strength Pyramid is such a good book. Like it's probably the one book I would, man, I'm reading Mladen Jovanovich's training manual. Have you read that or seen my, oh man. I bet you would like it because it's a lot of team sport training
okay.
orientation and stuff, but he does like he just kind of alludes to the fact that a lot of this stuff is just categorization, but he also
Yep.
talks about the philosophy of a lot of this stuff and kind of type 1 versus type 2 errors, and like he uses a lot of language that strength coaches don't use, right? And PTs
Yeah.
don't even use. And injects a lot of that. But the muscle and strength pyramid, when I like first saw that pyramid, I'm like, damn man, like that's pretty much, if I would have like understood that and been okay with that like 15 years ago, I'd be in a much different place athletically than I am right now.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'm like, I don't look like it with clothes on, but I some of my friends that are bodybuilders are like, yeah, if you really committed to like getting lean and like dieting and stuff, they're like, there's a chance that you could, in the right circumstances, win a pro card if you kept at it.
yeah, I mean, some of it's just like, what are your goals? And like, I mean, dude, the other part about like, there's a guy, he's actually coming on my podcast last week, and like in clothes, like people, he does not look jacked at all. And then it's like he takes his shirt off and it's like, damn. It's like, and some of it's just like, our vision of aesthetics and stuff like that. Being bigger. I think being bigger should be a lot of people's goals, right? But too
Yeah.
many people's goals or too much people are just afraid. Like they're really afraid to like do the thing when it comes to like getting
Yeah.
bigger. I'm
Well,
To me,
I talk to patients about that, like, because I'll have people, they'll be like, oh, well, I just want to get tone or whatever. And I'm like, do you know how much that like frustrates me? Because like I have purposely almost like majority of my life been trying to get to the point where people are like, oh, you're too big. And like I've gotten very strong. Like I can my best deadlift on the bar was 585, squatted 515, bench I did 320 really ugly the other day, bench. But people wouldn't look at me and be like, "Oh yeah, you can lift that much."
well, and like our we're it's so skewed. Like
Yeah. Yep.
my father-in-law has been lifting for 3 years now, and he's gotten a lot stronger. He's also a 67-year-old man now, and like physically he does look, and he's performing well, right, for a 67-year-old. My mother-in-law is like, well, I don't want him to like look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm like, and me and my wife's a PT too. She's like, like that, you have like no idea how this works, right?
Yep.
And how like non-likely that is to happen. And the funny thing is like she sees the benefit to him, but she's still like afraid of it somehow. Like she
Yeah.
sees
Yep.
how capable he's been and how he feels better. Like he went on a fishing trip like a month ago with dudes that were like, his age or younger. And he's like, yeah, they were all tired like halfway through the day and complaining about their backs. And I was like, let's keep going fishing. And so like people see it, like my mother-in-law sees it, but she's still like weirdly afraid that like he's gonna get hurt or that it's like, oh, like so let's talk a little bit about like patient narratives. Maybe some things
Mhm.
that you hear on a regular basis that frustrate you. Uh like what are some of those things and how do you work with those things?
Um, Most of them have to do with like narratives that they pick up from like pop culture or like I think like physio culture for such a long time. Cause I mean, like that's where most narratives probably stem from is like they've heard it from someone or like a friend of a friend or someone that got treated. A lot of it is like uh built in like fragility narrative, like, okay, like I know my core is weak, my posture sucks. Like those are the biggest ones that I take a lot of issue with. I haven't heard in a while now, and it may be geographic location and stuff like that. Like I haven't heard much about like squatting being bad for your knees. Um, I did have a patient say yesterday, like they used to be much more active and exercise a lot, and that's why they probably have arthritis. And like that one also like peeves me.
Yeah. The metabolic argument or the fact that arthritis is like a metabolic syndrome as much like it's not there yet. Where I do think you're right, the squatting for your but is bad for your knees has changed. Like I literally saw something like somebody people send me like I have a few of my first clients were like just literally friends of my parents, so they're like 70-year-old
Mhm.
ladies at this point. And they send me like the article that they found in the Wall Street Journal about like how squatting isn't bad for your knees anymore. No, which is good, right? Like
Yep.
it's nice to see some of these overarching narratives. And then my physio brain or my, critical brain goes, well, that article's still kind of dumb. Like it didn't do a good job of explaining why type of thing. But I guess it's
Yep.
better to have the narrative just generally be out there. Um, so what got you into exercise and then eventually physio in the first place?
So, like, my story stems from that I played football and I was like very overweight. I've always been very, like, pretty tall. Like, I guess very tall. Like, it depends on what you think. Like, I'm 6'2". My wife, for example, is like 6 foot even too. So like our kids are very tall, but I played football in high school and like I wasn't very good, but I used to be a lot more athletic when I was in like when I was younger, and then I got really like overweight. So I started lifting weights because I was like, okay, like I think that's how I'm going to get stronger, be able to play, like, stuff like that. And then I really liked like lifting weights and stuff. And then, like I was still overweight, but I was like an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, all that. And then around college, when I started like losing weight and really getting into the gym like more frequently and like really liking it much more. Like I did from some respects, like it before, but it was just like training for that, like for football rather than like for aesthetics and like maybe also to be like stronger. And then that's when I really got into it for like more of the other benefits too. And then I had gone to college initially for like PT because it was kind of like what my mom said was like, oh, this is a good career field to get into right now because she worked for the Bureau of Labor and Statistics
Gotcha.
um, at the
Yeah.
county level. And so she saw like the trend and was like, yeah, you should probably like get into that.
Would you still tell that kid that like at this point or no?
Only because the career path that I've had, like I have like if it wasn't for my like family stuff, like being tied, say to like the US right now, like I have the opportunities, like I could move to like Europe or like somewhere and probably just like teach kind of ed like full time.
Hmm.
Um, and like the fact that now I'm like able to do that. Like I went to Vienna this year. Next year I'm going to go to Prague and Vienna and travel around with my wife through Austria and Germany and stuff. And like that's something I would never have been able to do, or let alone like I couldn't afford that with a
Yeah.
regular job, and like I can just pay for it because I'm teaching courses there.
Yeah. I mean, well, and like, I mean, that's so I always go back and forth about like of like and that your post yesterday or just about evolution and stuff. It's like and just the complexity of life, which was also the post the day before, but like um it's crazy what can happen if you're willing to like try, right? And
Yeah.
I know that's such and like and I also recognize that like the world can is kind of a shit show seemingly, right? Well,
Yeah.
especially if you consume so much news that you're just like I do think like news is just fear porn. Like I think you
Yeah.
should be
Yep.
informed, but it's also at this point just I got so triggered over a few things last weekend that I was like upset for like 30 minutes. I'm like, dude, why? I had to stop kind of consuming the news in like 2020 because it was affecting me. Aside from a lot of things, it was affecting me very negatively
Yeah.
because I'm a ruminator. I imagine you're probably a little bit of a ruminator. I don't know.
Yeah. I think
But
people that are more like intellectual into like not all intellects, but like people that are more into like kind of philosophy, psychology and stuff, I think we tend to be.
well, because you're like trying to work on intractable problems in your brain. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like it's not helping you, it's just exerting energy, right? And
Yeah. Is this workable? No.
yeah, exactly. It's like how does this affect me right now? And so but like the fact that you're found a way to make like because there was a time and this was also in 2020 when I was like just really I was frankly just I didn't hate my job for the first 2 years, but I also was like working in we decided to travel, which was cool. But then COVID happened
Mm,
and I was like just taking any job I could get. And
yeah.
it was a grief, like the grief of seeing older folks and like, and we were also moving around on a regular basis, which is also a big that'll set you up for some anxiety and depression moving around on a regular basis, right? And then a global pandemic. But I was like, shit, I hate physio.
Yeah.
and and then I've honestly turned a lot of that mindset around mostly because it's like, well, it's dude, like you got to do something, right? Like you got to take some action. And like I think it sounds silly, but like even posting on Instagram is helping some people, right? Like
Yeah.
I have
And
people message me every once in like on a regular basis, like, hey, that post is actually super helpful for me. Like, thank you, right?
yep, yeah. I've had that happen. And I have people tell me like, and I've seen it in the curriculum too. Like I have always been one of those people that then like I would say like I don't have the largest platform, but I think I followed some of the trends in the right way, and then like not necessarily wholesale jumped on to certain things and kind of waited a little bit until there's more evidence, and then point out like, well, okay, that's great, but here's some flaws in it. Even like I've done that with like pain science recently, and then like I do see now where like curriculums and schools are changing too in response to that, especially because like there's been a lot of students that follow me, and then they and I've told them like the best advice is like if you're in the US and you feel like what you've learned was bad, like then you need to take that survey that they send you after you do your licensing exam and say
Yeah.
like especially like ultrasound should not be in our curriculum anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's no reason for it. There's in 2001 there was meta-analysis and evidence that said like it didn't do anything that is beneficial towards like things that we regularly see. And then like I've seen that too where I've had that positive effect like in other countries like wholesale. Like some people were telling me that I forget which country it was one of them in Europe where like their professor followed me and is why they were introduced to like biopsychosocial as a model.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which is awesome because it's like, okay, now we can actually start to like help people conceptualize some of these things that honestly, man, like I had like an intuition. Like we talk it's funny because we talked about like the biopsychosocial model like the first week of PT school and like that like intro to health. I don't know if you guys have the same curriculum, but like at Iowa, the first 4 weeks or the first four to
Yeah.
6 weeks are like, hey, here's kind of all the stuff that like we just have to get in, right? And it was like health and exercise recommendation and some of that stuff. And like we talk about the biopsychosocial and then
Yep.
literally I don't think it came back up again, right? When like now I would look at that be like, this is probably something that should be woven into literally every single part of this curriculum, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think there was a lot that we learned that now, like, if I were to go back and sit through stuff, I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, I recognize that. But it just didn't like
yeah,
hit me.
Well, and so much of it, yeah, that's a big point too. And then like so much of it is orientation around we want you to pass this licensure exam, and like we kind of
Yeah.
we know what's going to be on this. Like so
Yep.
let's get you passed, right? What the stupid shit that people do that like is persistent, and there's practitioners who still do it. What is it about, like, why do people still do that type of stuff? Like, what's your opinion, like spinal manipulation, right? I'm not saying it's bad, right?
Mm.
I just like, and maybe especially like thoracic and lumbar doesn't really matter that much, so it's fine to do it. But the narrative that we're still telling people that this is going to fix XYZ, or that it's putting people in alignment, like, why does that stuff still persist?
I think it comes from like how we've talked about complexity, like at a meta level, if you understand like because this is some of the stuff I've gotten into with like learning the getting into the work of like the human rehabilitation framework, which is more of like a meta model to organize thinking, to like organize complexity so it can be used like useful. Um, is that like one of the things I was introduced to with that was like, okay, we have these worldviews, we have these core yearnings like psychologically. um like you could reduce down like the human experience to like six core yearnings. It's like, belonging, orientation, like all that kind of stuff. So like your brain inherently wants to like take stuff that you've learned, continue to make it easy for you to use, make sense of the chaos that is the world. Like everything is chaotic. Every model that has ever existed, we've just made up to like organize chaos. I mean, some people, I'm not like trashing or shitting on religion, but like some people theorize that religion in part of like for our brain chemistry is because like we need something that can explain the unexplainable.
Mm.
So there's always got to be something that like that makes sense. And that's where like even some philosophy comes from, is like Nietzsche, scientific revolution. Like that's why, I mean, and I think his is probably one of the most misunderstood like philosophies, I think.
Oh yeah,
Um,
people shit on Nietzsche because it's like, I mean, even that movie, like The Little Miss Sunshine, like shat on Nietzsche because of like the
yeah.
idea of like the Superman, or like he's trying, and like that. I don't think that was where his points. I'm not like a Nietzsche expert by any
Yeah,
means,
I've
but
never read like all the stuff, but it's like, well, he says nothing matters because it's like you're supposed to define the meaning and like interpretation. So like our brain naturally wants to do that and like reduce things, make it simple, make it usable. Probably you have some reinforcement of like you've learned that somewhere, and then when you explain that to patients and do stuff and then they feel better, like that reinforces that bias. And we're more likely actually in some situations to like in these situations where you want to be a good practitioner, you will always more often remember, this is one of the times where your brain isn't as negative, is it will positively reinforce your biases and stuff like that, because that's what you want to do, rather than just like, you know always making you feel like shit and saying like, because naturally our body and our brain is going to be more negative, and but like inherently it's a little bit more conservative, and it goes, oh well, these things are comforting for you, this seems to make sense, you seem to continue to have like, improvement or progress when you do these things, and it won't look for all those other reasons why this could be helping somebody.
yeah, I mean, like, so I told Jake I was like running 5 minutes behind, and I was because I was talking to like a client of mine who's been working with me for a long time. She's a scientist. She works in a lab, and she's super intelligent, right? But like also like her intelligence like backfires for her in regards to like certain things. Like she works in a lab, and uh scientific lab culture, and this is like what she's told me, but it kind of makes sense, is kind of toxic in nature. Like she's a mom of two kids and stuff, and
Mm,
she just has so much pressure on her to like, she's got to conduct experiments, and then like she'll be working for like 12 or 14 hours, right? And like she can, the next day she could like take off or only show up for 4 hours, like, but she feels like a tremendous amount of pressure to show up and work a full day. Even though it's like I did my job that prior day and I have the flexibility to, like, she's like, and I'm like, all right, so like, how does that, like, what does like your intuitive brain say, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, it says I should just like either, well, some of it is like, why do you feel like you need to show up and work like a full day after you've done that 14-hour thing when your job doesn't explicitly say yes, right? And we can talk a lot about more of these conditions that we're in. Like the environment we're in dictates so much of
Yeah.
what we do, right? But she's like, well, I feel like I'm gonna get judged by these other people, by my
Yeah.
coworkers, and I'm like,
Yep.
do they matter, right?
It's
And
tribalism.
exactly, right? And
That's why our brain does that. It's a survival trait.
exactly, and it's like, well, because survival for her is keeping her job, right?
Yep.
But it's also like it's one of these things like, and like literally, she's like, the head of the lab actually just came back with like cancer. He's got cancer, and I'm like, hey, this is multifactorial, but like, do you think that his job contributed to that to some extent? She's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not saying you're gonna get cancer, but like, do you think about that? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, well, so what do you think? And she's like, I gotta take control and ownership of what I can. And sometimes that means like pissing off or letting people judge me, right? Because people are
Yep.
gonna judge you no matter what, right? Um, and that's the multi-fact. And then we talked about her bench press, right? So like that's the multifactorial nature of like trying to help a human navigate quote unquote stress, right?
Yep. That's
Um,
why I like ACT. That's why I like accepting commitment therapy, because you're like, well, does that move you closer to alignment with your values or away from it?
I man, I feel like ACT should have been taught in school to help like us navigate being a student in the physio world and just
Yeah.
like, and you posted, I think you posted that SMART goals weren't like
Yeah, I
very.
shared that from forget who posted, because originally I saw it because Mike Taylor posted that, and then I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me repost it from the place. Let me just, because it's
It was like
archived
it
now.
was a military medicine group or something like that. And
Yeah, it was. It was Mops and Mo's.
okay.
Um, yeah, they posted it yesterday, it looks like. Yeah, and that was very interesting because like that, like stuff like that happens so much in the US in particular. Like, not that it doesn't in other countries, but we just have this like toxic, rugged individualism and like work culture. Whereas like we are conditioned like at such a young age to be like work, 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 and like that's what's important and stuff versus like balance. And even like, not that I'm not patriotic in some ways, but I see like how much even my kids in New York, like there's so much like pro US propaganda that I sent some stuff that my daughter brought home from kindergarten to like people in other countries, and they were like, that's insane that like they give that to her.
I think my theory is that we're in our teenage years as a country and we're like
Yeah.
learning hopefully how to be like mature adult like
Yeah.
adults as a country, but like right now it's like we're the best, like, and like I even just hate when people like so well, I want to talk about this a little bit because I think fatherhood has been a really good it's been a really good thing for me. It's also really hard, but
Yeah.
like when they're like, oh, he's the best dad in the world, it's like, no, he's not. And it's okay that you're not the best dad in the world. Like, just
Yep.
be a good dad for your kids, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Be the best dad that you can be for them at the time.
yes, it's like so, and even the physio world is like he's the best physio. I sometimes I do like there's like a thing that comes out and it's like the best physio in Iowa City, and I'm like, yeah, but are they like? And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like what matters is being good and helping people and giving people like I don't if you yeah you may be the best at putting in knees, but if 50% of those people don't need those knees and they should have been
Yep.
trying to exercise, like I don't give a shit, right? So.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I say this in the courses. Like, I'm like, I think I'm pretty good. Like, I think that with the skills that I've learned, stuff that I know psychologically, I could probably go anywhere in the world, fit in, do pretty good. And I'm like, and I always tell people though, I was like, but so could you. And I was like, there's
Exactly.
nothing stopping you from doing that.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of John Wooden's like best quotes is like well one of my favorite John Wooden quotes anyways like hey, you're no better than anybody else, but you're no worse than anybody else either, right? And so
Yeah.
then I also just freaking love John Wooden as like he was, I don't know him, but I've read enough of his stuff and it's like he was just enough of like let's excel, let's set standards, but also I'm gonna be a human helping humans,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of stuff boils down to, right? So
Yeah, and that's what I say my course is too, is like it's like I want to view it as like I know all this stuff. It's some stuff is a little bit easier for me. So let me make it easier for you so that we can all be better. Because like I learned a lot of stuff from like when I went to Austria, I learned so much from them, like about like their culture, like what are issues in their culture versus like that we see, what are things that people believe. And then like they would say stuff or bring stuff up, and I'm like, oh, I never thought to like do it that way or say this that way or something like that.
dude, that's the power of like getting out of your environment and traveling, right? And like just
Yeah.
that, like those little frames and the. I mean, one of my. Have you ever read Well, it's Thinking in Systems by gosh, what's her name?
I
Uh,
haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
Donna Meadows. I think that book should be also part of it's not going to be, but part of curriculum because it's like, hey, this is like she uses the zoo analogy a lot. Like,
Yep.
okay, we're gonna create this zoo, and then we're gonna have all these. We have to navigate like the different habitat of various animals that shouldn't be in this zoo per se.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's just like you got to challenge your brain to think like on those higher level type of problems because yeah, I mean, in PT school, it also makes sense. It's like this person's got elbow pain. Like, well, what are the three things you need to do? Like, where they're just trying to help you become a little bit of a mechanic. And I think that's also kind of the nature of it is like when you graduate school, like you kind of are a mechanic, right? Like
Yeah.
this is A, okay, plus B equals C. And then you get out there and hopefully you have enough interactions with real humans to like, oh shit, this is complex. Like,
Yeah.
and
Like even like I as a student, my last year was like all clinicals. In my
yeah,
hospital clinical, I saw a guy that had neglect, and I was like, it was like hardly noticeable that like he had it, but there were just like little subtle things that would happen, and I was like, I think you have neglect. And then I did a couple more things with him, and I was like, yeah, that really seems like he has like right-sided neglect.
yeah, yeah. And that's like, I mean, that's also just the power of like you've been exposed hopefully to something that makes you like, okay, I'm seeing something. And then being okay with honestly in the healthcare space, just like asking the question or being like, let's test this out. Because
Yeah.
so many things just get overlooked and missed. And I'm not saying that if things get overlooked and missed, you're bad because it's fucking hard helping people. But like you have the opportunity to test and like that's super powerful and like I was lucky enough to have in my hospital rotation a lady who literally just asked me questions and we just scoot around the hospital and see patients and she was literally just such a good CI in the fact that like she just let me do and like
Mm.
then she was there for support and guidance but like it wasn't her trying to like teach me anything if that makes sense. It was just like it was her trying to teach me something, but it was like,
Yeah, but she was letting you do it by like experience,
it was
like
like,
adult learning.
here's a bandwidth, right? Stay in that bandwidth and I'll help you
Yeah.
as best possible, which was like, I think it was really good. It taught me a lot.
Yeah. And that's when you mentioned like the books that should be in curriculum, I think like I think if you were to put certain pain books in there, I would want the like Louis Gifford ones because the fact that it like especially once you've taken neuro, the fact that if you're you should be very scientifically minded by the time you're in PT grad school because you've taken physics and chemistry and A&P and gross anatomy and neuroanatomy and all that stuff. Um, is because he views explains the pain stuff in a way that's practical and also from terms of like evolution. So you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense because like you would see blah 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 blah, and if that's fresh for you from like neuro and stuff, it makes a lot of sense. And then it melds a lot with like psychology. Once I've been like reading that and then like the psych books, I'm like, oh, these are like exactly the same processes, just like pain and stuff rather than it being like I have depression and anxiety. And it's easy way to like link the stuff all together.
Have you ever read How Emotions Are Made?
No, I haven't.
Dude, it's so I read this book by Robert have you ever read, okay, I'm just gonna keep throwing, have you ever read at you, not to do that to you, but have you read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky?
I've heard it in like snippets of it, but not read it. I have such a long list. Like I have a book on my bookshelf. I have like Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Like I have to
Yeah.
get through the
I need to get through. That's the one on
yeah,
my list. So, but anyway, we could do that all day. But I
yeah,
love Sapolsky because he's funny. I'm sure there's good criticisms of some of his arguments and stuff. But Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcer is like a really just it made a lot of physiologic stuff make sense in like a narrative way, which I thought was really cool. Um, and then I read this book by him called like Determined, and it's basically how like everything is predetermined based on the thing that happened before. Uh,
okay,
which was an interesting take. But then I right after that I read How Emotions Are Made, and in that book she's basically saying like, well, your brain's just a predictive machine, right?
yep,
So
hmm,
to change your outcomes, you have to change your predictions, right?
yep,
And so that also requires like dissonance, right? It requires
yep,
like um so you just start to and it's like I don't have like these linear like really good scientific A to B type things, and that's why I think you mentioned like a lot of my posts come off as almost philosophical and pain, you know, and more cognitive behavioral type, a lot of it anyway. um
yep,
and it's because like I don't have like I love Ben Cormack, but whenever I listen or talk or see Ben Cormack stuff, I just get this like giant angst of like, okay, it's fucked. Like, oh, what the hell do I do here? And that's just kind of Ben's, like the paper on the knee patellar pain. It's like you gotta check your biases, and I'm okay with that, right? But also like, I've also helped a lot of people with patellofemoral pain via strengthening and other
yep,
stuff, right? But it's like you have to like create you have to take action, right? It's just is that action the only thing going on, right? And what are all the other effects, and then how do I maybe use those effects to my advantage is how I'm
yep.
thinking about it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think like too, Lee, often because of like it's easy to be like nihilistic because especially like where I live, like Rochester, like there's so many of the patients that I see, like vast majority of them are like on Medicaid. We like Rochester's a food desert. There's like high levels of violence. Like the inner city school system is not that great. Like, you know, there's lots of social problems that would also significantly skew like our outcomes to
Mm-hmm.
be like negative, and it's hard to not like see that and think that that's all just on you, which I don't want it to just be like a pass for people. But like I think sometimes if you realize like you're in an environment that's not like conducive to like healing for people, like
Yeah.
it can be very hard for you to just do your job at a minimum level. Like I have to ask patients, like, do you feel safe like going for a walk, or like could you get somewhere where you could do that and it would be okay for you,
Yeah.
or you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, and like, yeah, I think the hard part for, and it was even me in like, in just going back to like 2020, where my brain was like, is like, what matters? Like, what, like, does
Yeah,
this even matter? Like, let's, like, and to be honest, there's some amount of just absurdism in like living, right? It's like, dude, does life matter? Well, not really. So you just got to get busy living, right? Like, and you know,
yeah,
now I have, and this is a good transition, maybe not a great transition, but like now I have a 7 month old kid, and like, dude, it's fun being a dad. It's hard, like it's scary. I mean, even you know, like last week I like woke up in the middle of the night thinking about like nuclear apocalypse and like how sucky
yeah.
that would be, right? And I'm like, oh, I got my angst is coming back.
Well, and now like how old are you?
I'm 36.
So I'm 32, so we're both like millennials. So it's like our millennial like sense of humor has been like because like we've been through so much stuff, and like to think that we weren't probably traumatized by like sitting in our classrooms in 2001 and seeing like 9/11, and like
Dude.
we lived through this the stock market or the housing market crash. Like we've lived through now unfortunately two Trump presidencies. That's just my personal opinion. uh
No, I think that opinion. Oh man, I you know why he won? Because he had a clear message, and
yeah,
people attached to that clear message of. And it sounds so silly, but "Make America Great Again" is more clear than whatever the hell Kamala was trying to say, right?
yeah. And right now too, I mean, you're seeing right now because of what is happening that there are people, core people in his base that are finally starting to turn, because they're
Yeah,
like, this is
yeah,
like nothing we voted for is actually like being done. or like
Yeah.
happening, and we're getting into situations that like we saw that happened under Obama that we also didn't like at that time, and now it's just happening again.
Yeah. It's uh the best thing that people can do on the opposing side, because I don't get on Facebook very much, but I see
Yeah,
rhetoric of people just don't hate the other side, because then you're just gonna like you're reinforced. Like, man, I saw somebody who's clearly liberal say like you guys should burn in hell type of thing. It's like, why? Don't do that. Like the way to separate people is make them your enemy for no freaking reason. Like these are
yeah,
still your neighbors out here. These are still people who just are just as confused as you, making decisions about things that they have no idea what's
yeah.
actually going on, right?
And
That's like
some of it's come like full circle. Like I know people that live in like deep Appalachia,
mhm.
and like they were like, I never thought in my lifetime I would see my, say, like my grandparent be supportive of like democratic stuff.
Yeah.
But because they have such deep-seated hate like for the government and
Yeah.
like certain things that have like happened, they've come like back
Dude.
around
Yeah.
because they're like, hey, I don't support like whatever it is, right? That is they consider to be government overreach. And it's just like because that's their standby, they're like, I'm gonna go more this way, but they fluctuate because of that, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's dude, it's a hard time to be alive. It's also like I said this to somebody else. It's like there's never been a better time to be alive per se,
Yeah.
but it's also like fucking scary. I think that's what
Well,
being on the edge of history always is, right?
yeah. Before right now, like at like this moment when we're recording it, um, like around literally like just after 2020, other than the Ukrainian invasion, like actually at that time, like the world was more peaceful than it had been like in the previous like 100 years. Cause like people forget that like Europe and Asia and stuff was like regularly like I mean, we have the 100 years war, the 30 years
Oh
war,
yeah. Yeah.
like just constantly at war all of the time. And then like actually like you said, like news is just like violence, like porn or like misery porn. It's like actually like rates of violence are like were significantly
Dude.
down, like
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the data on a lot of things was we were trending in a really, and I think we're still in a lot of ways. It's just
Yeah,
like
we're better than things were, but it doesn't feel like it.
it doesn't feel like it, and that's like that's kind of my ultimate cognitive behavioral thing is like, hey, you gotta like, oh, we did something. I mean, you just go out and you live your life, and it's just people trying to get by, right? It's just
Yeah,
people trying to do the best they can, right? And like you said, like in the circumstances of Rochester, it's like, yeah, if people don't have access to food, if people don't feel safe, it's like some of it is like, how do I be a good person in my community and promote
yeah.
some of these things that we know? Like, I think, I don't know if it was you or somebody, it's like social determinants of health versus like something else. And it was just social determinants of health blow the other stuff out of the water. It was some meme post, but
That gives me an idea now for the meme though. Like I need to make that with
dude,
the
you should make
train.
that. Please do. Because it's true. Like,
I think I did that in my healthcare. I did one on healthcare is inherently political, and it
yeah,
was because social determinant health are such a large product that in your environment determines a medical outcome more than like interventions at minimum. Like the lowest amount that they could account for somebody getting better is 10%.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you just, I do think quote unquote success leaves clues, and like you see, okay, who is doing well into old age, and it's like, okay, like these are the factors that they seem to demonstrate, right? All right, let's go to like the meme of wait, it's all load management and graded exposure. It's the astronauts.
Yeah.
Um, like what? Because this is a common. It's becoming more and more of a common theme that people are like, oh, okay, load management. What is load management to Jacob Templar? And give me your cliff notes and why it's always been that.
So a lot of that is like I picked that up from like the more and more science stuff that I read and like then like Gifford stuff and like all that stuff. It's like and even in psychology is like load management, like stress management. It's like okay, so these things are causing you an issue. They're a problem right now. So okay, maybe for a little while we have to change how you do those things, do a little bit less of them, but ultimately we need you to do them more again.
Hmm.
And if you don't do that, what we see is that humans develop persistent pain because of changes in other physiological things versus like when we look at evolutionarily, like I don't know, I have two cats. My cat's laying right over here. Like a cat does not experience persistent pain the way that humans do because they're forced to re-engage with activity again, otherwise they would die, like if they were in the wild
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
um and maybe they do die, and then that sucks for them, but like there's that pressure that they
Yeah.
need to get better versus like
Yeah.
we don't necessarily have that, so we have to kind of artificially induce that. And then what happens is that we often see that people don't get to the point where they get back to doing, and that's where they
Yeah.
get stuck.
Yeah. Uh well, and that was a very good, concise framing of that. I struggle with like keeping it that concise, but the pressure piece is huge, and um you see this so often when people start to get like a little bit older, and people start taking care of them or doing stuff for them, right? And
Yep.
it actually erodes their physical capacity because they're not doing as much as they should be doing for themselves,
Yep.
right?
So you mentioned that, and it's funny because a PTA that I know around here is doing his master's in mental health, and he sent me what's going to end up being his dissertation and his lit review for that. And he actually found in cognitive behavioral therapy, and like they were looking at like chronic pain, that one of the biggest factors about why people will then continue to have problematic persistent symptoms and worsening of the symptoms is because of caregiver like overreaching.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I believe that 100%. And like it's it's hard because even as I posted on this the other day or yesterday maybe, or it's like my 7-month-old is so frustrated learning to crawl, right?
Yep.
But if I don't let him be frustrated, and if like we had some friends come over like a year ago, and they had he was like a year old, and he's like he's just not walking on his own yet, and my wife was like, well, do you just pick him up? And then she's like, yeah, dude, I
Yep.
pick him up all the time. I'm like, yeah, stop picking him up, he'll
Do
figure it out.
you know how much I make my kids like struggle with certain
Oh
things?
my God. If you feel like you're tortured, but at the same time, it's like this is
Yeah.
this is what it is, right?
I'm like, oh no, this is good. You're gonna learn. And
Yeah.
then like, or like they'll like pain wise, like I just don't react. Like people will
Yep.
do, and I will tell people in my family, like when they react when my kids do something, I'll be like, don't do that again.
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
like, do not do that. You're gonna teach them bad habits.
Yeah. Oh, so this is like pain is so, and I'm always going back because I do think understanding that pain has to be sourced through your consciousness, otherwise it would not
Yeah.
matter, right? But also like there's something going on physically with your body that you're trying to become aware of, right? But it's also a giant learned behavior that
Yeah.
gets us attention. Like,
Yeah.
dude, I mean, I never faked like an injury growing up, but I know kids that did, right? And
Yeah.
and to be honest, I was not an amazing athlete. I was a decent soccer player in high school. I wasn't great, but and I
Yep.
was a backup quarterback like on the football team, right? So I was not like incredible, but if you were not a starter, like those kids were injured more, because you know what got them some attention is, oh, my knees hurting. There's an excuse for why I'm not starting, and I can go to the trainer's room a little bit more often. And like
Yeah.
me as a 17-year-old kid, and like I probably had some derogatory words for that at 17, but I'm like, what's that about? And I think I also just kind of quote unquote took pride in toughness, which is probably not always good. Um,
Yeah.
but it was a giant learned behavior that I'm like, and I try to really suspend. I mean, I'm a human, so I judge, but I try to suspend judgment and be kind. Kindness is more I'm trying to be kind than I actually am
Yep.
kind,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that
But
reminds me of like, because I was like I played center and I was a starting center through my whole like high school, and we were pretty good like for the level of competition that my school was. But like I remember playing like all the time with like high ankle sprains. Like I don't remember a season where I did not have just like a high ankle sprain the entire season. And then it's like I realize it's different because I'm not at the athletic ability to be an NFL player. But then you'll see like NFL players will miss like 6 weeks, or they'll miss like um what's the other one? Like turf toe. And
Yeah.
like our starting running back had turf toe like every season. And then like the Christian McCaffrey, like whatever's being botched with his like rehabilitation with
He's got bad
tendinopathy.
bilateral, really bad tendinopathy, and it's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? Well,
I'm like, that's not something that's gonna like lead you to be more injured. Like you could play with that. It's just it would hurt and maybe you don't play as well.
I mean, and like the hard thing is like if he's just there's a real chance that he tears his Achilles tendon just playing football by playing football, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then so what then we go as we do like and we're like, oh well, we shouldn't have let him play. Right? That's the hard part about I think a
Yep.
lot of those environments and the athletic environment. I had Q Willie on a few
Yeah.
podcasts ago, and he's just like, there's a reason he's leaving the athletic environment that he's in because or the athletic like he's at the University of North Carolina. I think a lot of people be like,
Yep.
this is a great job, and it's like, nah, you know, his I think his experience is like, no, it's not. Like it's not like people are so afraid of pain still. You know, being a PT in that space is still a weird dynamic. Um,
Yeah. I've
yeah,
heard that from I have a colleague that I talk with I would say pretty much every day now. And their Olympic strength and conditioning coach. And they were like, yeah, some of the stuff that I see sometimes is very frustrating.
yeah, I don't think you can escape the frustration. I think it's just how do you channel it, right?
Yeah.
In so many different ways. Um, the the Christian McCaffrey thing, and like we're just armchair quarterback, and this is like,
Yeah.
I mean, the dude's probably just like I've seen his training videos, and I've seen them how he's probably just overtraining a little bit and not actually addressing some of the basics of letting some stuff calm down. But who knows?
Yeah, and at that level, sometimes too in training, you can do stuff that would be like traditionally, you're just like, that's kind of dumb because like they're just so gifted. Like, I mean, they're so much better of an athlete than like we will be in our lifetime that like, you know, they can just kind of do whatever they want and they're just going to be like continue to get better.
I think strength and conditioning brings up the lowest common denominator. Like it would if strength and conditioning is super meaningful for me who is a mediocre athlete. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I do think like me now, if I was gonna go back and coach like 15-year-old Dave on like lifting and stuff, it would have significantly improved my athleticism just because I would have been moving better. I would have done appropriate progressions of strength stuff, and it would have given me a lot more psychological confidence. I honestly
yeah,
think that. Some of my buddies who were just dumb, you know, guys. They're like they're good guys, but like they were just dumb. And they when I got yelled at, I took it personally, and that like made me less confident. When some of my buddies got yelled at by a coach, they just like whatever, fuck it, I'm gonna go catch the ball now. And like
yeah,
and that's like that's where I think a lot of really good athletes are. They just move on to the next play so much better than
yeah,
people who are a little bit more they take things personally or whatever. Like that's probably going to be my one of my biggest things, hopefully as a lesson to my kid, is just like stop taking stuff personally, because it's just life. People are I would take things so personally and I'd ruminate on it for 4 or 5 days, and it's like, dude, I the more I realize it, like that shit doesn't matter. So all right, wrapping up here. Well, I had a good wrap up question and I forgot it. What are the three or four? What are a few things that right now are getting your goat, and how would you change them when it comes to like stuff you see on social media about training or physio or anything like that? What are the things that you're like, this needs to end?
I think the training one is the like just that like extremism of like not under like the not seeing the forest through the trees of like people want to talk about these, and this is in PT too. We want to talk about all the things that are in the weeds more often, and I think that's okay, but you should be prefacing these conversations with like, if you're already doing this
Yeah.
and this, let's talk about this. And I think that would be the biggest thing And like I'm trying to talk about the bigger things, but those are not as popular, I think.
They're just less sexy.
Yeah.
They're almost like, well, that's kind of a given, right? Like, oh, I should be consistent. So that's kind of a given. But like, are you consistent? No, not
Yeah.
really. So should I be worrying about like my tricep angle, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you should probably just show up consistently, right? Um, no, I'm probably on board with you there. And I think it's just what garners attention, right? Like, oh, that's the, I also think, a lot of our ego as we get this degree, we're told we're doctors. Oh, it becomes our ego, right? And then we get wrapped up in two things: fear of missing out, and that other
Hmm.
people are, oh, because I don't have a dry needling certification, patients aren't going to come to me, right? And also just this like, again, who's the best, right? And maybe not
Hmm.
everybody thinks like that. I don't necessarily think everybody thinks like that, but like there is an ego thing. Like if somebody switches from you to another practitioner or whatever, or but really like a lot of times that's just a better fit, hopefully,
Yeah.
right? If they have a
Another
choice.
that would be another thing that gets my goat is if you're like we all complain about the system, but I think like unless we're all gonna like collectively like actually, because I think collectively like physical therapy, like if we all came together and said like, okay, this system sucks, like we want you to rework it, and then like we were able to get like the other professions to do that, like particularly we would need to see AMA do this. um but like we could potentially see like an improvement in our medical system because right now we pay the most per capita of any developed nation or high income nation, and we don't have the best outcomes by far.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. It's wild, but it's like this. Yeah, you're 100% right. It's a big giant system that requires a bunch of collective action to change, and it's like hard to get a lot of people on board.
Yeah, we would need like all nurses, all like PTs, probably all physicians to like unite and be like, no, we're just done with the like private insurance as a whole because it limits really what we can do for the benefit of our patients sometimes, especially like people that I see with persistent symptoms. Like you can't treat somebody as a PT in New York under the diagnosis of like fibromyalgia, for like instance.
That's wild. That's wild to me. Gosh. All right. Well, Jacob Templar, I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah,
I guess we're gonna talk about fatherhood. Okay, that's one last quick question. How many kids do you have?
I have two. My daughter's 5 and my son's 2.5.
How has being a father affected like your training in any way or your life? Like, what are the biggest lessons from being a father?
My training and stuff, I got a home gym and I train when my kids nap, and my training schedule is revolved around like when I have that availability because like my son has his nap time from like 1 to 4. And so like I train Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday because of that.
The home gym was the home gym like would you rather go to a gym, you think, or does it matter to you?
No, I've always really like trained kind of by myself. I'm not like I will have friends maybe that were there, but we never like trained together.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that. I like being solo and I get less distracted, even though lately I've been getting more distracted and it's been taking forever. But like it allows me more flexibility because then I don't have to like drive anywhere, stuff like that. I do like it. I have just what I need. And if I were to add anything, I'd have a Smith machine probably.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
that's kind of it.
The I do think an economical home gym is one of the best investments people can make if they if they want to, because it's like, man, put in. You also just got to get over the perfectionism of like, this isn't the perfect workout because I don't have a lat pull down or I don't have XYZ, and like just go sling some weights around and have some fun. And like training since having our son has just, it's honestly funny because like um I've like I've squatted like 465. I've deadlifted like have deadlifted like 495, something like that. I haven't deadlifted 500, which makes me feel really shitty, but like I've done okay with some of this stuff. But it's funny because like um I care less about the outcome and I'm just focusing on the process and doing
Yeah.
it. And it's my training is like, it's really productive and good. Right. And it's like, damn, I just wish I would have got here like 15 years ago, but that's kind of the nature of life. Um, Yeah, man. Well, hey, super cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, where can people find you?
Uh, I'm on Instagram at strength and evidence underscore physio. I'm on TikTok now. I post pretty much just the same stuff on there. Just more reels. I do have a YouTube, but same thing. I've just been putting shorts on there for now. Um, yeah, that's kind of it. Instagram's the main one, like especially if you want to like DM me and talk about stuff, like that's probably the best place.
I love it. Well, appreciate your time. Have a good, this is Thursday. Have a good Thursday. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll see you online.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks, everybody. Peace.